The death of Robin Williams has so many people around the country, indeed around the globe, talking, and it's bringing fresh awareness to depression and mental health in general. We have two medical experts live in our studio. They're here answering your questions at WPTV.com. Elaine Rotenberg is the clinical director at Alpert Jewish Family and Children's Service in West Palm Beach, and Josephine Healy is a primary therapist and the assistant clinical director at the Lighthouse Recovery Institute. We thank you both for being with us. Josephine, we'll begin with you, if I may. People watching this broadcast are going to be some who may feel depressed, and they may feel that themselves, or they may look on at a loved one and say, how do I know if this is something that I should seek help for? What are the markers and the warning signs? I'm getting that a lot today. Let's begin with you.
I think some of, the most important things to do is to look at the basic symptoms and signs of depression, which could be loss of appetite, changes in sleep pattern, changes in appetite pattern, withdrawal from social activities, and a decreasing interest in things that used to be important. And if we can educate ourselves on the symptoms and signs, then we can really look out for those that we care about most.
In yourself or in others. And sometimes it's toughest, in the most part, to aim that mirror at yourself. Elaine Rotenberg?
Well, one of the challenges we have is the stigma attached to mental illness. And really, if we're going to use this tragedy to kind of move the needle a little bit, what we really need to do is begin talking about the fact that mental illness is an illness. That 1 out of 4 people, some say 1 out of 5, but even that's high, struggle with a mental illness in our country.
Very briefly, and we know you're going to answer a lot of questions on the web, very briefly from both of you. Robin Williams, he had the money, the resources, and I've had people say, gosh, if he couldn't get the kind of help that could help him from this, who can? How do you get the right help and make sure it's effective?
I think that there's levels of help at all different socioeconomic levels. I think it's really about just having people who care and being educated on the signs and symptoms and seeking help or asking a loved one if they need help, depending upon what resources are available for you.
Do you agree? Because he could have had any help he wanted.
I think in the case of a case like this, we're not talking about somebody not being able to afford services. We're talking about somebody who is, again, shut in within himself, perhaps ashamed, not being able to share about it, and suffering alone.
And those are the kind of things you have to look for in yourself and others.
Correct.
And make sure you deal with. We're going to talk about it on the website, much more on air. We thank you for helping us begin this conversation. We'll have much more from both of you through the hour and a half. Shannon?
Michael, thanks.
Kelly, thank you. And picking up where Kelly left off, right now we have two medical experts live in our studio. They are here answering your questions at WPTV.com. We're welcoming in Josephine Healy, who is a primary therapist and the assistant clinical director at the Lighthouse Recovery Institute, and Elaine Rotenberg is the clinical director at the Alpert Jewish Family and Children's Service in West Palm Beach. Ladies, thank you so much for continuing our conversation today, a very important one in light of what happened with Robin Williams. The stats that were mentioned in Katie's piece are alarming. 1 in 10 suffer from depression. Earlier today, the CDC releasing another stat I heard saying more people died by suicide than car accidents. We spoke, Elaine, about the stigma with depression. Expand more on that.
Actually, this stigma is probably the biggest issue and the biggest challenge we face right now. And in our community, in our county, there are some major initiatives like the Mental Health Action Alliance of Palm Beach County, like Mental Health First Aid, where we're really taking a look at breaking the silence about mental illness. We're bringing a program called Mental Health First Aid through the Jewish Family Service to our county, which is really a program to teach ordinary citizens how to spot and recognize a potential mental health crisis, just like we might recognize a medical crisis that somebody has, because mental illness is an illness, just like a medical illness.
So important to recognize those resources that are out there.
Absolutely.
Josie, tell us about the people that are writing in. What are they saying here?
A lot of the people that are writing in are talking about personal issues. Where can I get help? What are local resources? I'm concerned about a family member, a friend. So we've been pointing them to the 211 hotline. There's also the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And another way to get help is talk to a general practitioner or your family doctor as well if you're concerned about a family member on what action to take.
Such important information. Ladies, thanks so much for continuing our conversation. Josie and Elaine will be here with us until 6:30. If you have a question, you can remain anonymous. Just go to WPTV.com and submit your question. Again, they'll be here until 6:30 tonight. Shannon.
And speaking of help, we have more help right now back in the studio. We have a web chat going on WPTV.com, where those of you at home, if you have a question that you would like to ask, you can ask it anonymously and get it answered by our experts in the studio. That's it for Now Live. I'm Kelly Dunn, WPTV News Channel 5.
And here now, your chance to get your answers, or your questions answered about mental health and depression. Our web chat does continue until 6:30 this evening, so send in your questions at WPTV.com.
Such a wonderful talent who hurts so deeply inside. And of course, the question today, how do you seek help? If you are suffering depression yourself, or if you know somebody who is, how do you pay closer attention? I'm here with Josephine Healy, Lighthouse Recovery Institute, and Elaine Rotenberg, Clinical Director of the Alpert Jewish Family and Children's Services. We talked earlier off camera, and I want you to take the time you have. If there was one thing that you absolutely say, I want to leave viewers with today in terms of where they can go for help or what they need to know, what would it be?
At Lighthouse Recovery Institute, I've seen a large percentage of both mental health and substance abuse issues co-occurring together, such as Robin Williams suffered from. And I just really want to stress the importance of treating both of them together to increase chances of lifelong happiness.
And Elaine Rotenberg, you had earlier said, boy, there's one thing I want to make sure I do not leave viewers without today who may be struggling with depression, who may not know the signs, where to turn, how to get help for them or a child or a friend or another loved one.
Mental health, mental illness is treatable. It's one of the more treatable types of illnesses that we have. Ordinary citizens can take a course such as mental health first aid.
Mental health first aid.
Mental health first aid is an international program that Jewish Family Service is really taking a lead at bringing to our community, which is to teach ordinary citizens how to recognize signs and symptoms of a potential mental health crisis.
And just give us a few of the pointers you absolutely must look for.
How to approach somebody who may be in a crisis. How to say to somebody, are you thinking of hurting yourself? And knowing that it's okay to ask those kinds of questions in a non-judgmental manner.
Josephine, a closing comment?
A closing comment, it's never a bad thing to ask someone that you're concerned about if they're okay. It's the best thing you can do. You might be saving their life.
Thank you both very much, and we know you've been talking to a lot of people on the web. We hope we're helping you think about ways that you can help either yourself or someone you love. And you can also share your memories of Robin Williams as well as your condolences through a link on our website to the online guest book. Shannon?
And our thanks once again to our experts tonight, Dr. Elaine Rotenberg with the Jewish Family Children's Service and Josephine Healy, Lighthouse Recovery Institute. They've been fielding your questions and concerns about depression and mental health tonight for the last 90 minutes here. Our thanks also to you at home for taking part and helping shed light on what is often a problem, and it's dealt with in silence many, many times. So thanks for joining us tonight.
That, too, will be a big part of Robin Williams' legacy.
Yes, indeed.
For all the humor and laughs, and reminding us about the dark shadows that hopefully enveloped him, and hopefully others can be helped. NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams next.
Good night.